My name is Lohr, and I am here to tell you the t-shirt story of the world. Now, 2 summers ago, Sean Hewins, the other co-founder of Project Repat, was stuck in what can only be described as the world's worst traffic jam. This was in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, after a couple hours, Sean finally found out what caused the accident. He finally got to the front, and he found out that it was an overturned fruit and vegetable rickshaw being pushed by a guy wearing a t-shirt that said, "I danced my ass off at Josh's bar mitzvah." Now, Sean wasn't entirely sure how that shirt got all the way from the United States to Nairobi, Kenya, but he was pretty sure that that guy didn't actually dance his ass off at Josh's bar mitzvah. And this is very common in parts of the world like Kenya. You see a lot of people wearing secondhand, used American t-shirts. So Sean and I thought we could do something with this. Let's tell the t-shirt story of the world. So we started buying back some of the most amazing t-shirts. We brought them home or repatriated them. We branded them with our stamp that said where they came from and when they came back. And then we sold them to raise money for our nonprofit organizations. And that's how Project Repat started. But the real question remains, just how do millions of t-shirts get from the United States over to Africa every single year? How did Josh lose his prized bar mitzvah t-shirt and have it end up on the back of some guy in Nairobi, Kenya, pushing a fruit and vegetable rickshaw? Now, the answer to that question might not be quite as simple as you think. And really, there are actually 2 systems by which our old t-shirts get from the United States to Africa every single year. And the first system has a lot to do with this. Now, this is the bearded repatriate. He is the Project Repat mascot. We call him Beardy for short. Now, Beardy today is sporting a t-shirt that says New York Giants Super Bowl champions. I know Beardy's not going to win a lot of friends over here in New England wearing this t-shirt, but I promise you it's just for show. It's an example. He's actually a huge Patriots fan. But there's a couple things about this t-shirt that you might not know. Now, the first thing about this t-shirt is that this shirt actually had a counterpart. And out there in the world are actually thousands of New England Patriots Super Bowl champions t-shirts. See, what happens is the NFL and retailers, before the game, they print thousands of shirts saying that both teams won the Super Bowl. Now, when the Patriots lose the Super Bowl, unfortunately, the NFL doesn't want any of those t-shirts anywhere near the United States. So they take those t-shirts and they donate them all to an organization called World Vision. Now, World Vision takes those shirts and brings them over to African countries like Zambia and hands them out for free to people over there. Now, there's something else you might not know about this t-shirt. This t-shirt actually took 700 gallons of water to produce from scratch. So really, when you think about the NFL, they're producing thousands of t-shirts and using millions of gallons of water just to produce shirts that no one here in the United States is even going to wear. Now, these are all shirts that are getting over to Africa as what I call part of the dumping system. And this is the first system by which our shirts get over to Africa. There's no markets involved here. No one's buying or selling these shirts. We're simply taking these shirts and giving them away for free to people in other parts of the world, just dumping them over there. Now, there's a lot of other organizations that are doing this kind of work. There are organizations that are collecting old clothes here and bringing them over to other places, giving them away as charity. And then there's companies like Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes has a genius marketing campaign. It allows them to sell millions of pairs of shoes here in the United States, all based on the promise of giving away a pair of shoes for free to someone in a lower income country. Now, these companies and organizations are all part of this, what I call this dumping system, giving stuff away for free. And the real question is whether these companies and organizations aren't doing more harm than good in those countries. And that's a question I'm going to attempt to answer in a couple minutes. But first, I want to tell you about the second system by which our old t-shirts get from the United States to Africa every year. Now, a lot of people know that some of our old clothes end up in Africa. But very few people know that the majority of our clothes actually end up in Africa as part of a billion-dollar industry. And this billion-dollar industry features organizations like the Goodwill and Salvation Army actually selling off the majority of t-shirts and clothing that they get donated to them. So you donate a t-shirt to the Goodwill. They don't actually sell it here in the United States. They don't give it away to someone for free. So what ends up happening is they sell it for pennies on the pound to middlemen who take these shirts, ship them across the Atlantic, and put them up for sale in these massive secondhand markets in countries like Kenya and Tanzania. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute. when I donate a t-shirt here in the United States, it's not actually being given away to someone as charity who needs it, and you're not even selling it here in the United States, but we're forcing someone in a lower income country who probably makes far less than the poorest average American to buy that shirt back on the open market. Maybe that makes some of you a little bit mad. Maybe you're ready to jump ship on the Goodwill and Salvation Army, donate all your clothes to World Vision. Or maybe you're ready to head down the street and buy a new pair of Tom's shoes so that some kid in Africa can get a free pair. But let's look into this system a little bit more. Let's try to understand. This is a system I call the Goodwill System. Let's try to understand the economic implications of a system like this in a country like Kenya. Roll the video, please.
Used clothing is big business in Kenya. A lot of people are involved in that business, either importing them in bulk, distributing them, and selling them. You are talking of a big number of people employed in that industry itself. And it's easy to get involved in that. You just go and take a few and sell.
With 1,000, you can start a business. So t-shirts, after that maybe you advance, you can start maybe with jeans.
The business firms want to stop the imported second-hand so that they can produce new clothes here.
Right.
And they say they are bringing unemployment. But if you compare the employment involved in the second-hand clothes, the number of people who are actually involved is much more than any factories would employ.
Right.
So really, the economics is right there. You can't say no to it.
My Kenyan friends are saying is that millions of Africans are buying and selling our used clothing every single day. And even the poorest of the poor are participating in those markets. So when Sean and I were making that documentary, which is actually called I Didn't Dance My Ass Off at Josh's Bar Mitzvah, what we were amazed to find was that just one market creates thousands of jobs in a country like Kenya. One secondhand clothing market creates thousands of jobs. From bulk buyers to retailers to people taking our old clothes and cleaning them off to make them look new again, to tailors taking our extra large American t-shirts and bringing in the sides to make them fit the size of your average Kenyan. And then there's something like this. There's an entire artist movement out there based solely on the manipulation of our old t-shirts. So you can see what artists have done here. They've cut off the sleeves. They've matched the colors here. They added this piping. And then there's this intentional bleaching down the center of the shirt. And believe it or not, this is the latest fashion trend sweeping Nairobi, Kenya right now. And these are all shirts that are getting over to Africa as part of the Goodwill System. And you can see what the results have been. Millions of jobs created. And these aren't factory jobs in sweatshop-like conditions. These are millions of small businesses and entrepreneurs, each with the ability to handle money, to negotiate prices, work their own hours, and even pay taxes. Now, the problem with organizations like World Vision and companies like Tom's Shoes is that they're playing into what I consider to be an incredibly patronizing attitude of development. It's this idea that poor people need us to be giving them things all the time, that they can't participate in their own markets. And we're not just giving them stuff, we're giving them all our old crap that we don't want anymore. Now sure, maybe some kid in Africa is happy to get a free shirt or a free pair of shoes. But are we really producing a sustainable long-term impact in these countries? Or are we just undercutting local markets that haven't really had the opportunity to fully develop yet? Now, imagine you're a used shoe salesman in Nairobi, Kenya, and you rely on the used clothing trade to support yourself and your family. And one day, Tom's Shoes comes in down the street and starts giving away shoes for free. The only problem is that you and everyone else who relies on that market for a living can't compete with free. Markets in that part of the world are so delicate, they're so fragile, so competitive, and the margins are just tiny, that even coming in and giving anything away for free can completely undercut that market and prevent it from developing and benefiting as many people as it's supposed to. But just imagine, in 2010, 300 million Africans were paying for cell phone subscriptions. They didn't get it because they were giving it away as charity. They paid for it because they wanted it. That's a third of the continent. Now, you can think of organizations like the Goodwill and Salvation Army as the ultimate recyclers. They're taking products that no longer have demand here in the United States, and selling them into a system that brings them to another part of the world where they do have demand. And they're raising some revenue for their programs at the same time. It's better than them taking all those clothes and putting them in landfills, along with the other 5% of material waste on Earth that is used textiles. So what's the point? What's the moral of the story? There's two things that I'm trying to get across with this talk. The first is that we need to change the way that we think about helping people in other parts of the world. It's this patronizing attitude that we have all the time, giving things away for free. We don't realize what the economic implications are of that. We're trying to do good, but really we're just undercutting these markets. There are markets out there that are supposed to benefit a lot of people, and they're not doing so. And it's because we keep giving things away for free. We keep dumping things on those markets, preventing them from growing. And then there's the Repat moral of the story. So at the end of the day, Sean and I were inspired by what we saw in Kenya. We were inspired by these artists who were making new and exciting products out of our old t-shirts. So we thought, what if we can pay fair and living wages to people around the world to upcycle our old t-shirts? So that's how we get something like this. Now I'm trying to win the crowd back, the hometown crowd back, with the Red Sox bag here. The Red Sox. This is a tote bag made entirely out of upcycled t-shirts. So in Nairobi, Kenya, we're paying artisans there fair and living wages to make products like this out of t-shirts that end up over there. And now we're partnered with a worker-owned cut and sew company here in Morganton, North Carolina, called Opportunity Threads. And we're paying people here fair and living wages to do this work. So what's the moral of the story? There's a lot of good out there that we can be doing with materials that have already been produced. This cycle of constantly producing new products doesn't need to happen. There's a lot of good out there. Think about how many t-shirts you have just sitting in your closet you don't really know what to do with. And then think that we can create fair employment opportunities for people around the world to make products like this. That is the Repat moral of the story, and that is the t-shirt story of the world. Thank you.